This weekend in Green Bay, Wisconsin, 257 athletes heard their names called to join NFL teams, and many are waiting to join those teams as the NFL season approaches. Welcome back to Penn State Sports Night, everyone. I'm your host, Owen Klein. With me is Michael Hession. And Michael, a lot of teams in the NFL made some great progress towards the Lombardi Trophy.
I think you absolutely nailed that thing on the head. Like, this weekend separated to me the contenders from the pretenders. You saw a lot of teams not necessarily make aggressive decisions, but go for decisions like they knew. Like, they're like, hey, we see a guy on the board. He's perfect for our system. If we know what we're doing, this guy can turn out to be a great player for us, not just for the present, but for going forward.
And speaking of these great moves, what is a team that you think aced the NFL draft, Michael?
I'm going to say this, not necessarily being biased as a Ravens fan, but I will say the Baltimore Ravens, because over the years, they have been one of the best teams in terms of drafting and developing players. This year was no different. When you look at what they did in the first two rounds, drafting Malachi Starks at number 27, when many people considered him, some people had him going to the Dolphins at 13 in their mock drafts, and for him to drop to 27, have him line up with Kyle Hamilton and Ardarius Washington in the safety room, it comes to show you that Zach Orr, the Ravens defensive coordinator, loves running those three safety looks, and I see it to be no different. Then in the second round, they took Mike Green, who was another highly touted prospect. The only reason I feel like he dropped in the draft was because of character concerns going back to when he was at high school and at the University of Virginia. Last year, he led the nation with 17 sacks at Marshall. If the Ravens can get his character together, just like we saw with the Eagles when Jalen Carter was drafted a couple years ago, he is going to be a force on that defensive line for the next 5 to 10 years from how I see it.
And you're also forgetting their third-round pick, tackle Emory Jones out of LSU, which was a good value at that position too.
Exactly, and they drafted him for the necessary reason of being a versatile offensive lineman, because you lost Patrick McCary, who served that role for the last 4 to 5 years in free agency to the Jacksonville Jaguars. If Emory Jones can come in and fill that void at left guard to go along with Ronnie Stanley, Daniel Faalele, Tyler Linderbaum, and Roger Rosengard on that offensive line, Lamar Jackson's going to have all day to throw the football, and they're going to have a lot of good run protection for Derrick Henry to give him holes to roam through.
I can't be biased here, so the one team I'm going to pick is actually the Seattle Seahawks. They wanted to trade down from that number 18 spot, but couldn't find any suitors because there was not a lot of interest to trade. There wasn't as many as high-end prospects as there was depth in this class, as we alluded to multiple times over the weekend. But the Seattle Seahawks, they did what they had to do to give Sam Darnold the best chance to succeed, which was bolster their offensive line, which is what they did with North Dakota State's Gray Zabel. He can play anywhere on that offensive line. And in the second round, they had an opportunity to go up and trade for South Carolina safety Nick Emenwari, who they would have not been chastised had they taken him at number 18 overall. They didn't give up much to do it, and those two picks will certainly help the Seattle Seahawks in their quest to go do well and win the NFC West and possibly even more. And now on to the next. There was the enigma of Shedeur Sanders, a potential top 2 pick and maybe even number 1 at the start of 2024. He was drafted in the 5th round by the Cleveland Browns, and he was even the second quarterback taken by the team. What gave?
I feel like with Shedeur Sanders, there was a lot of character concerns coming out of Colorado. There was sometimes, like after a couple games, I feel like he didn't shake hands with a couple other quarterbacks. And there was one rumor where some of his teammates didn't even go to his birthday party earlier this year. There was a lot going on with him. And not to mention, there's obviously the situation of him being the son of Deion Sanders, which scared a lot of people away. I'm shocked that he dropped to the 5th round. I'm not shocked that he dropped out of the 1st round, but to have him be a day 3 pick, it comes to show you that when teams are evaluating quarterbacks, they don't necessarily look for individual skills or arm strength. What they look at is the intangibles, what his football IQ is. And I know some people say he has a high IQ, but to me, considering that the character concerns that I just mentioned, that scared away a lot of teams, and I feel like the most insane thing is he goes to a team that drafted Dylan Gabriel in the 3rd round.
That was probably the flop of the draft right there, but in my eyes, what I think scared teams away is what happened during the interviews. And I saw one in which he was regarded as this player says, what can you do for me instead of what can I do for you? And that is going to scare away teams if you're so self-centered. But maybe this will humble Shedeur, maybe not. But I can only hope that he and his family can sort things out for them going forward.
Well, here's the thing. Only the Cleveland Browns would be the team that would do this, because they did this with Johnny Manziel a decade earlier, and now it's happened again.
And I bet those in the AFC North are just laughing themselves to sleep over this.
I am one of them.
Yeah, but just one more thing before we wrap this up. What is the biggest mystery that is yet to be solved after the NFL draft?
I think the biggest mystery is the Atlanta Falcons trading up to number 26 to draft James Pierce, the defensive end out of Tennessee. I am not upset about the decision to trade up, because the Falcons were dead last in the league in sacks, and them getting Pierce and Jalen Walker in the 1st round had to be done. I am not a fan of the price they gave up. You're trading your 1st round pick in next year's draft to a team that has had a well-known reputation of fleecing other organizations since they hired Sean McVay as head coach. And if the Falcons do not make the playoffs, especially in a weak NFC South, they're possibly giving a premium draft selection to the Los Angeles Rams. And as history has shown us, the Rams, as I mentioned, are capable of taking advantage of another team's mistake.
But I think this shows a lot of confidence they have in their team right now. And I look at it this way. You're using your 1st round pick next year, this season, and the edge rush was arguably the weakest link on the Falcons last season. Matt Judon didn't work out for them, and also Braylon Trice was injured. But now you have 2 rookie edge guys who can dominate if they so desire. And if Mike Penix continues to develop as a quarterback, they can win the division and maybe even a playoff game. But it could come down to coaching. Raheem Morris, who knows if he can pan out. But also there's Baker Mayfield in the Bucs. Can Mayfield thrive with a 3rd offensive coordinator in as many seasons?
And not to mention, do not sleep. I wouldn't sleep on Carolina either. Not necessarily as a playoff team, but they cannot be ignored as a team that could win like 7 or 8 games this year.
Oh, not at all. But they didn't have the best draft. And the biggest mystery for me is the Pittsburgh Steelers. Sure, they still had the biggest issue at quarterback, which they only addressed by selecting Will Howard on the 3rd day. But still, what is going to happen with Aaron Rodgers? It feels like this team is just being built for him.
I feel like the Steelers, I'm glad, honestly, I will say this. Them taking Derek Harmon and Jack Sawyer, along with Caleb, who was the running back from
Caleb Johnson.
Caleb Johnson. I always get that name confused, but them getting those 3 picks had to be done because they have a lot of free agents this offseason, including T.J. Watt and Alex Highsmith. You need to find long-term replacements for those guys, as well as Cam Hayward potentially retiring. But with that being said, I feel like they are building up for Aaron Rodgers to sign there, and if he does sign there, there's going to be a lot of tension in that locker room, and they have and Mike Tomlin over the years had employed Antonio Brown, Le'Veon Bell, and Ben Roethlisberger. So this could be either the greatest team Pittsburgh has seen in at least a decade, or the second coming of Days of Our Steelers.
Hey, I know one thing's for sure. A Bear could be hibernating at the start of the time the Aaron Rodgers to Pittsburgh rumor started, and when the time it woke up, he still could not have made a decision.
I don't get it. He's been doing this for a long time, and from how I see it, there's just I'm like, okay, Aaron, I know you're one of the best quarterbacks of this generation, but please make up your mind.
And that's all the time we have here on Penn State Sports Night, but please be sure to follow Michael Hession's blog, Bragging Rights Sports, for all news on Orioles, Ravens, and Warriors in the reaction to their team's games. But that's all we have here on Penn State Sports Night. For Michael Hession, I'm Owen Klein. Thank you so much for tuning in, and see you next year.
Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in to this edition of Penn State Sports Night.
For more content like this and so much more, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Instagram, TikTok, and X. For everyone here at Penn State Sports Night,
We are
Penn State Sports Night.